Oh, how much do I love the prayer time we spend together every Sunday. I just love this addition we've made. And believe it or not, it is a gift of COVID. Who knew? Who knew that COVID would gift us with so much goodness? And how much am I loving those beloveds praying with us in the back? Hey, kiddos. For those of you online, we have some extra special guests who have been gracing us with their presence today. Hey, guys. All right. So Jan shared with you that we are beginning a new series that will run for the next 4 weeks. And love points the way and law makes the way possible is sort of the grounding idea in this series. And Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, Science of Mind, Centers for Spiritual Living, talked towards the end of his life that one thing he would do differently is talk and teach and preach more on love. He talked a lot about law, but not so much about love. So I want to share a little bit about how these two things work together. From Ernest Holmes in the textbook Science of Mind, all is love and yet all is law. Love rules through law. Love is the divine's givingness. Law is the way. Love is spontaneous. Law is impersonal. And so I want to invite you right now to just take this idea that there's love and there's law, and it's all God. It's all spirit. It is all the divine, whatever name you want to give it. It is all love and law. And so take a moment and go with me into a little bit of curiosity. What does love points the way and law makes the way possible have to do with you? Get curious. What does this idea have to do with you? Are you curious yet? All right, Vicki, what's it got to do with you? Vicki says creating and manifesting. And if you're online, feel free to put your comments in the feed. What does love and law have to do with you? Everything. Good answer. Good answer. One of the things Ernest says in that piece from our text is divine givingness is the love that Spirit is always giving us, and law is the way. So what if this divine givingness is a seed Spirit is planting in our gardens every day? This divine givingness, which is one of our principles, which is this idea of infinite love that is never missing, ever available, and not just this like etheric, beautiful, like, oh, when I'm sitting on my meditation cushion or when I'm in prayer or when I'm walking the labyrinth or whatever your spiritual practices may be, that's when I have some access to love, to God. But what if this divine givingness, this love pointing the way, is something that is being planted in your individual consciousness all day long, every day, ever available, never missing. And that there is no like, some people get planted the good stuff and some people don't. One of the things Ernest said in that quote was that the law is impersonal, which I can tell you when I first came to this teaching, I hated that idea. I was like, why wouldn't it be personal? Like, that's mean. But what that means is there is no favored and not favored. That divine givingness, that infinite possibility is available to all of us, which means it's available to you. And it points us. Love points the way. Love points the way. Not overthinking, not law made by humans. Don't get me started on that. We could spend a whole series just on human law and how not pointing the way it is. But love points the way. Law makes the way possible. So one of the reasons why this is probably my number one favorite go-to quote in our teaching is it because it reminds me in my human self, that human self that really wants to get my hands all in it and think I can micromanage life, thinks that I can somehow control life, reminds me that, oh, the law's got it, God's got it. I actually don't need to worry about how. Because the law is always in motion. Spiritual principle is always moving and responding to our consciousness. My only job, your only job, is to stay close to love's lead. The rest sorts itself out. I don't have to be all up in it. Where my effort lies, where my labor lies, where my work lies, is discerning and experiencing and being conscious of the divine givingness of the one that is always pointing me in the next right step, the next loving action. And what's beautiful about this is it means that there's a place to rest. There's a place to step outside of worry. There's a place to step outside of what we think is safety and security, which is usually what we're busying ourselves with. We're usually afraid that something is going to go awry, that there's not going to be enough, that somebody's going to do something awful. And so then we want to somehow control that outside circumstance. And we don't have to. And when we get in trouble is when we let those outside circumstances control us and get in the way of this incredible gift that Spirit gives to us every day, all day long. What Ernest Holmes called the impulse of love. He says in the text that the impulse of love is planted by the divine. And and I know it's a stretch sometimes for us to really wrap our brains around that there is only one. There is this incredible force that is good, that is love itself and law. And that when we allow ourselves to really begin to claim that as the truth, that means there can't be anything outside of it, which means you cannot be outside of this love. Which means it is right where you are all the time, and you have access to it. And that the simplest thing we can do as people on a spiritual path, as people who are interested in spiritual growth, if there's only one thing you do in your spiritual life, it is follow love's lead. That's it. If you just need to break it down and be like, I can't read any more books, I can't follow any more rules, I just need one thing to do. This is your one thing. Abide in love. Abide in that impulse that is being planted in you by the divine. And what I can guarantee is it's there. Even when you're scared, even when you feel like there's some part of your life that is just crumbling, Even when you feel like life itself is crumbling. When there are supply chain delays, when there are things missing on the shelf in the grocery store, love is still there. That impulse is still being planted in you. Life does not control God. We surely do not, as much as we think we do. If I just think the right thoughts, if I just get the right people around me, if I just go on the diet, save the money, get in the right relationship, then my life will be working well enough, and then maybe I can find some God. Maybe, which is one of my favorite strategies when I'm really flipping out, if God would just listen to this prayer and like I am praying the really right words. I've said it in all the right ways. Why isn't God listening to me? Anybody? Anybody mad at God sometimes because God doesn't seem to be hearing it right? I would offer, we may not be hearing it right. We may be so tuned in to what is happening here in the world. We may be so tuned into our fear and our worry. We may be so busy figuring it out that we miss the infinite givingness of the one. That every solution we seek, that every next right step that we are trying to figure out how to take, every single one of those answers and the capacity and the power to do it lives in this divine givingness. This impulse of love that is being planted in you every moment of every day, always. So what do we have to do? What is ours to do to be in connection to that divine impulse? Because I'm telling you, it's not negotiable. If you are sitting there right now, and I can hear some of you in my head, so I know you are. If you are sitting there right now like some people have that divine impulse, I ain't got that divine impulse. I got missed in the divine impulse department. No, you didn't. That is actually not one of the possibilities because God is all there is. You are not somehow existing somewhere outside of the one. You did not get missed. Guaranteed. Now, do you need some skills in the listening department? Maybe. Do you need some help maybe getting what's in the way out of the way so you can hear better? Do you need to learn how to quiet the noise so you can feel the impulse? Likely. We all do. That is truly where the work of spiritual growth and transformation lives. Is we've got to become incredible listeners. We've got to decide the most important thing in our lives, the most important thing in our lives. And I'm a mom, so I get it. Mamas, I get it. We think our kids are. They're not. Abiding in love is. Everything else comes from that. Anything we want to do that is great, anything we want to do that is good, anything we want to do that is meaningful, anything we want to impact in the outer world comes from love. And when we stay close to that, when we abide in that divine givingness, when we allow ourselves to consciously accept the seeds that are being planted by the divine every moment, all things become possible, right? All things are possible in God. Another one of my favorite sacred text quotes from the Bible. All things are possible in God. And the good news is we don't have to worry about how. We don't have to worry about figuring it out. One of my red flags when I know that I am a little bit out of alignment and need to probably quiet down a bit is when I'm figuring stuff out. Anybody else? Big figurers? Yeah, me too. You can raise your hand. Just put your little hand up online, guys, because I know this is a cultural issue, right? We think somehow in our individual humanity that somehow we can figure out life. But I want to bring you back to how big life is. The greater reality, we like to call it in Science of Mind in the New Thought community, the greater reality, which is capital G and capital R, the reality that is God. We don't have the management skills. It is not ours to orchestrate this reality. It is ours to stay close to the truth of who we are, to stay on purpose as divine emanations of the One. And anything we could ever need to figure out, to manage, to even micromanage, because we just keep busying ourselves with that. It all is handled if we can follow this one thing, love's lead. Capital L love. Capital L love, which is Spirit's divine givingness to us, being planted in our own beings all day long. Our only job is to get next to it, to feel it, to sense it, to discern it, to hear it, and then act on it. One of the things that I know about what gets in the way is how we move our attention when we're scared. And there's a lot to be scared about these days, yeah? So one of our great, great tasks ahead of us is to go, oh, I am freaking out. I can feel the fear in my body. Fear feels a certain way. If you notice that you've got fear going on in your body, that is Spirit's point to come back to love. Come back, beloved, I'm right here, still planting, still giving. Fear is not the problem. What we do with fear can be problematic. Here's what's beautiful. Anybody garden? You know I love my garden metaphors. I'm a gardener. Does everybody who gardens feel like weeds are a problem? Right? Every spring I'm like, why are you coming back? Why I gotta pull you again? But here is something that is beautiful about weeds. They are beneficial. But we must understand what to do with them. Rather than be mad that those weeds just keep cropping up, we can go, whoa, what can I do with you? I see you, weed. I see you. Let me understand what you are, why you are here, and then make good use of you. Let me turn you into mulch. Let me turn you into some compost and feed the things that I actually want to grow. Fear is not a problem. Anger is not a problem. What we do with it depends on our understanding and our willingness to just go, woo, yep, that's happening. Fear is all up in the mix right now. Rage, anger, blame, victimization. They're going to happen. It is part of the human experience. And nothing is outside of God, not a thing, because God is all there is. So how can you make good use of what is showing up in your garden? Because Spirit is planting good stuff in you, always. So if there's a weed showing up, if there is a thought form that you cannot seem to let go of, if your mind is spinning on figuring it out, ask yourself, how can I make good use of this? How can I take this fear, this worry, this circumstance that I really don't like, and make good use of it, turn it into compost? How can I put it in the right place in my being and make room for what I would like to grow? But what that means is we must be willing to get into our bodies. I think many of us in spiritual communities think somehow that what's happening in our bodies, these feelings and these emotions and blah, blah, it's also very messy. It is not outside of God. So it must have goodness. It must have a possibility for good, because God is good. So rather than be in deep resistance, rather than be in denial, rather than think there's something wrong with you because you've got fear, or because you're angry, or because you feel victimized, consider that Spirit is moving for good in all moments, at all times, and that you can take that fear and go, woo, what you trying to tell me? What do I need right now so that I can come back to love? What can I learn from this anger, from this fear, from this difficult situation, whatever may be happening in your lives? And I'm going to give you an opportunity to have that practice right now. Take a minute right now. Look at the garden of your life. Where are the most weeds? Are they in your relationships? Is it in your health? Is your bank account weedy? Is your thought process weedy? Take a moment and just scan the landscape of your life. Where are the most weeds right now? Are you terrified about what's happening in the world and don't know how to reel that fear in? Now I want you to just take a moment and know that God is right there. Right in that fear, right in that anger, right in that worry, right in whatever circumstance right now in your life feels unmanageable and you don't know how to figure it out. And thank God you don't know how to figure it out, because God does. How can I allow that to speak to me so that I can put it in its right place? How can I allow myself to just feel that feeling, whatever it is, located in my body, give it some attention, and then let it pass right on through so I can make it useful in its right place? And know that right underneath that, right underneath the worry, right underneath the fear, right underneath the anger, right underneath whatever discomfort you are feeling right now, there is love. There is an impulse that wants to guide you in the next right step, and you can get to it, and the only place I know we can get to it is in our bodies. So whether you are someone who hears the voice of God, that still small voice, whether you are someone who notices things out in the world that suddenly light up for you and you're like, wait, that looks like it could be a symbol. Whether you are someone who can feel the bubbling up of love giving you an impulse to move. All of that happens because we have bodies. And here's what I want you to know, is you can learn to discern this impulse. The simplest way I know to do it is to move towards joy. The wonderful thing about joy is it's an actual emotion. An emotion simply means energy moving, which is a discernible, feelable thing in our bodies, and it's a characteristic of the divine. It's that sweet spot that we have access to as humans. So when you move towards joy, it's a really great strategy for following the divine givingness of the one. To follow love's lead. One of the ways that I do that is I have a very distinct experience of joy in my body. It feels like a little bit of champagne inside. It just bubbles up. I call it delight, but delight and joy are synonymous to me. And I can feel it. And if there is something that I am moving towards in my life that does not have the bubbly, it's a no. People talk a lot about if they have a full body yes. Yes, have you heard that idea? Right? You don't say yes until it's a full body yes. I don't always know how to feel that. Anybody else struggle with what is a full body yes? How do I know that? Is it my toe in it? But I know the bubbly. And so that is one of my strategies to stay close to the one, to abide in love. Glennon Doyle, in her podcast, I've listened to one of her podcasts recently, and it is called You Can Do Hard Things. It's a great podcast. I highly recommend it. But she talked about moving towards what is warm. That's her strategy. She feels a warmth in her body when she knows she's on the right track. So you can learn how to feel that in your own body. And if it's moving you towards joy, if it's moving you towards delight, if it's moving you towards warm, you're on the right track. You can trust your capacity to discern the one moving in you, guiding you, is actually happening. Because that's the other place I think we fall, is we don't trust that guidance, even though it's always there. How many of you look back on maybe not great choices and go, ooh, I knew better. I knew that was not the person for me. I knew that was not the job for me. I knew that was not the house for me. Whatever the thing you knew with hindsight. How did you know? What was that little ding, 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 ding happening in your being? Because you have evidence, I guarantee it. Every single one of you can look back on your life and go, ooh, yeah, I knew. Now, take those weeds from your garden and make use of them. Put them in their right place. Learn from it. Ernest Holmes. The evolution of one's consciousness brings with it the acquisition of new powers and higher possibilities. The evolution of your consciousness brings with it greater possibility. Your evolution, or as we like to say around here, your transformation, which is what we are up to, right? We want to transform, we want to grow. We want to be able to, in our own consciousness, have a manifest experience of more good for ourselves and for every life on this planet. And the way we do that is we get better at abiding in love. We get better at following love's lead, at learning and trusting, having faith that the one is giving itself to us infinitely, without fail, no matter what. No matter what you've done, no matter what is happening around you. This is it. This is the one thing. If you want a one thing kind of spirituality, this is it. Abide in that love. There is a true north in you. There is a compass that Spirit has given you to follow. And you can. You absolutely can. And I want to tell you why. This prayer that I have shared in bits and pieces a lot this year already is an ancient Zoroastrian prayer that predates Islam, predates Christianity, predates many, many, many of the world's religions that we're familiar with, and yet the prayer has not quite made itself manifest in humanity on this planet. So I believe we need to keep praying it. Join me. With bended knees, with hands outstretched, do I yearn for the effective expression of the Holy Spirit working within me. For this love and understanding, truth and justice, for wisdom to know the apparent from the real, that I might alleviate the sufferings of all on earth. God is love, understanding, wisdom, and virtue. Let us love one another. Let us practice mercy and forgiveness. Let us have peace, born of fellow feeling. Let my joy be of altruistic living, of doing good to others. Happiness is unto one from who happiness proceeds to any other human being. And until that prayer is made manifest, our work is not done. And when we choose to make the most important thing abiding in love and following its lead, that simpler, kinder, more delightful life we all long for not only starts to come into being for ourselves, but for life itself. And I know you can do it. I watch you do it all the time. I love you so much. Let's anchor this together in prayer by saying amen. And so it is.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you. What I wanted to start it off with was a reading from the Holy Quran that speaks of the commonality that we have as human beings, that speaks to us, God is speaking to us as Muslims, of the commonality and the things that we should reach outwards towards the community at large. And this is from the Holy Quran, from Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat or verse 177. In the name of God, the most compassionate, most merciful. It is not righteousness that ye turn your faces towards the east or west, but it is righteousness to believe in God and the last day and the angels and the books and the messengers, to spend of your substance out of love for him, for your kin, for the orphan, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the ransom and freedom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which ye have made, and to be firm and patient in pain and suffering and adversity, and throughout all periods of panic. Such are the people of truth, the God-fearing. And so, for us, in this ayat, I want to relate that God tells us that it's not that we turn our faces to the east or to the west, and this is a reference to Muslims about our rituals that we perform. That God is telling us that it's not the rituals that you perform that make you righteous, but it's believing in the oneness of the Creator, that there is one Creator, that there is one God. And we may all have different names for Him. We may have different books that we worship, that we read and follow. We may believe in angels or not. We may believe in the prophets or not. But there's one thing that we all share in common that God tells us to do, and that's to spend of our substance. And what is that substance? When God tells us, spend of your substance, that substance is the love, the compassion, the mercy, the kindness that's in all of us. We can all find that within ourselves. And to take that kindness and spend it on kith and kin. In other words, on your family. And not just your family, that's your blood relations, but our family of humankind. We're all family. We're all, even now, according to science, based on our DNA, we can see that we have one root, that we come from one source, that we come from one people, that we spend that love not just on family that is blood relations, but the family of humankind. And that we not only spend it on family, but Allah tells us, God, and Allah is just the Arabic word for God. It just means God in Arabic. That God tells us that we should also spend that substance on the orphan. And not just a physical orphan, some kid that doesn't have a mother or father, but those that do not have family. We have to reach out to them and give of that love and of that compassion. And for the wayfarer, those who are traveling, those that travel in our lives, that come in and out of our lives. We may know them, we may not know them, but it's our responsibility, it's incumbent on us to love the wayfarer. And just even the person who asked. This is what's amazing, that God tells us your responsibility is not just for those that you know, but it's those that you don't know. And it extends even for those who ask your help, or those who don't have the ability even to ask for help. And to free the slaves, and there's all kinds of slavery today. There's slavery to gambling and drugs and money. We can go, there's a whole list. To help the human being to free themselves from those oppressions that we put on ourselves. To be steadfast, all of us can pray. To be steadfast in praying and worshiping the Creator, and to practice regular charity. In other words, to give to people who are in need. And these are things that we can all do, that we can all share together, and to be firm. See, we're in a time right now where fear can overcome us. It can overwhelm us. But as people of faith, people of God, people of heart and love, we have to be firm and patient through all of this pain and suffering that we're going through and adversity. And God tells us through all periods of panic, this is a thing that we have to do. And then He tells us the people who do these things, the people who love God, worship Him, and are a service to each other and a service to this creation, to the sky, to the oceans, to the animals of this earth. These are people of truth and people who are God-fearing. And in Islam, the fearing of God isn't this adrenaline fear. It's having the fear of doing nothing that displeases the Creator. And so in this ayat, I find that we can come together in common ground, as if we've come together here with this community, and our community coming together and working together to be of service to the community outside. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.